One. Season's greetings, and welcome to the final edition of the year. The dynamic duo, Charles Kirkland Jr. and I will discuss our worst movies of 2020. This is always one of my favorite shows of the year. And on this show, we will unveil our list of the cinematic train wrecks that we tried hard to forget. But unfortunately, we couldn't. We'll have all that and more on episode 434 of The Big Show, Keeping It Real with FilmGordon. Let's go. All right, and welcome to our final show of the year. Charles Kirkland, what's going on, sir?
What's happening, big brother? I'm so happy to be here. Are you sure? Are you sure this is going to be the last one?
You never know. You never know.
Something might happen between now and January 1st. We might have to just jump in and do another show.
You ain't lying, man. You're absolutely right, man. I am Tim Gordon, editor-in-chief of FilmGordon.com. And before we start our show today, I want to do, we remember, and I posted it yesterday, John Ecstasy Fletcher from Houdini, who passed away yesterday at the age of 56. Bruh, man, I'm telling you, I'm feeling old, man, because I remember partying hard off of 5 Minutes of Funk, Friends, One Love, all of the Houdini catalog back in the day, man. So you heard about that yesterday, Charles.
I did, and it was a sad thing to hear. I mean, being that old school rap guy that I am, that's what I listened to growing up, and man, that's the soundtrack of my life. You just ran through a lot of it.
Yes, sir. All right. Well, I hate to transition from that to this, but yeah, we're going to talk about some of the worst movies of the year because last week on our show we talked about not just the top 10 television shows of the year, but the top 10 movies of the year. And this would be the flip side of that show. So before we begin, this is going to be a little different. Wilson is not going to join us today because I didn't want to hear Wilson's list because it might have been like the list we got from our friend Lanita Cook last week in Kansas City.
Well, would Wilson even make a worse list? I don't know if he would do that.
No, not publicly. Not publicly. That's just not who Wilson is. All right, so before we begin, man, let's talk a little bit about the criteria. As I was saying to you, that we always talk about when people ask us, what do we look for when a movie's good? You talk about the screenplay, you talk about the acting, you talk about the directing, you talk about sometimes the score that moves a film along, the editing of what a film is. I mean, there are lots of moving parts in order to really make a film work. And when a film doesn't work, it's the same thing. Sometimes the concept of a movie. And I think a lot of times, Charles, for me, when we talk about stuff that doesn't work, sometimes it's just bad concepts. Last year when we did this show and we talked about the worst film of the year, it was LaQuisha, about a guy who masquerades as a sassy African-American woman to host a talk show. And I could not believe in 2019 that a movie like that, somebody thought that was a good idea. Yeah, man, you go ahead on, keep writing that. I couldn't believe like a friend of yours would have been like, player, you got to pull up, man. That's just not going to work in this era. So that's kind of what my criteria is. What are some of the things, Charles, that you flag when you see a film that's clearly going south in the wrong direction?
Well, for me, I think it's a lot of the same things. A concept is always, let's be honest, in Hollywood, there's not a lot of originality. I mean, so a lot of times you're going to have concepts that or ideas that keep coming up. And so a lot of time for me, it's the execution of that concept or how they communicate that idea, even though it's a recycled idea. Do they do a good job in doing it? I mean, we're going to see stories that are the same over and over again, but it's just, you got to be able to pull it off, execute it well. And so sometimes it's the director, sometimes it's the actors. You mentioned the score. Sometimes the music can be overwhelming and just incohesive with the theme of the movie. And so there's a lot of things that just sometimes just don't make a movie work and just make it horrible.
Right.
So a lot of times I get to review these. I'm happy though. A lot of these movies I reviewed, and some of them it was just so bad that I just decided not to even bother with it. But for sometimes, I mean, for the purposes of our website, we got to put stuff up, and there's some stinkers that on this list. I got a list of 10, but we see so much stuff throughout the year that sometimes 10 is not enough. I've seen lists of 50, I've seen lists of 60, and just the other day, EW released a list of the 98 Christmas movies, new Christmas movies of this year, and over half of them are going to stink. So, I mean, making a list of 10 is kind of hard, but these are the 10 that I saw that were horrible, and plus maybe a few honorable mentions because we'll have some time for that, hopefully.
Well, go for it, man. I mean, so let's kick it off. I think we're going to do this thing a little differently, man. Just go down your list, and then I'm going to go down my list, and then we'll have plenty of time to kind of find where we have common ground. And then if there's something that we need that's different on each list, then we can kind of talk to the audience about what those are, and then try to figure out as well in your list if you have a clear number one, because I know I do.
I do.
All right, so go ahead, man. I'll let you go first, man.
I mean, I tried to rank mine from 10 to 1, but when you get into this area, sometimes they all kind of stink. But I do have a definite number one. So number 10 on my list was this wonderful little movie called, and I say sarcastically wonderful, Capone, starring Tom Hardy as the gangster Al Capone. Not very good movie. Tom Hardy as a wonderful British actor, and sometimes he was speaking as Al Capone like he had marbles in his mouth. It just didn't, his performance of the character just did not work for me. After seeing so many people play Capone well, he did a terrible job, and it was a horrible movie to watch.
Oh, Robert De Niro famously played him well in a movie, even in a small scene. But okay, all right. And what's number 9?
Number 9 for me was Fatal Affair. It's one of those African American tales, twist on Glenn Close and Fatal Attraction, all those love things gone wrong. But this movie was just gone wrong from the start. So, not Omar Epps was not scary. I mean, it just didn't make sense. Terrible movie.
Okay, all right. Number 8.
Number 8, the wonderful Kristen Stewart, who a lot of us love from the Moonlight series, tries her hand
Twilight.
at Twilight. What did I say?
Moonlight.
Twilight. Yeah, Moonlight. Oh no, different thing. Twilight. Kristen Stewart started a film about I guess you call it an underwater sea observatory or whatever that gets struck by an earthquake and all starts to fall apart, called Underwater. And I think the whole movie was underwater from the start. It was terrible movie. Not I wish that everyone would drown, and most of them did, thank goodness.
All right.
So Underwater comes in at number 8 on my list.
Okay, number 7.
Number 7, Blake Lively tried to get into the action genre with a movie called The Rhythm Section. And I mean, there's some people who can do the spy thing well, and there's some people who can't do it well. And I think it really wasn't her fault as much as it was the story was terrible, but it was partly her fault too. So The Rhythm Section, which came from a wonderful book series, just didn't communicate well on the screen.
Remember it well.
Number 6 for me was we get Vin Diesel in a comic book movie, and comic book movies are dear to my heart. The Image comic Bloodshot came to screen with Valiant Comics Bloodshot comes to screen, with Vin Diesel playing the man who could not be stopped, but for some reason should have been stopped, and the whole movie probably should have gone that way as well. I think they were just trying to cash in on his name being a star, but it just didn't work. Wonderful comic book that just did not communicate well again on screen. Screenplay just did not go. Yeah, look
My
at
chin the whole time you're talking about Bloodshot, like.
Wow. Stop me if you heard this before, but my number 5 movie was a recent Netflix film called Ava. I did slam Ava because it's another one of these movies where someone who doesn't belong in the genre is trying to do an action film. No, it didn't work. Didn't make sense. I was unbelievable in her action. And I know
I'm laughing because our producer, aka my significant other, hated Ava, and she's like saying, "Thank you."
Wow. A terrible use of John Malkovich and some other really pretty good stars. Just no.
Okay. Go ahead. I'm not arguing that you're wrong on any of these. I'm just like, yikes. You got a lot of films on your list I don't have, but go ahead.
Okay. I'm pretty sure that you'll have this one. Number 4 on my list, in another Netflix film. I'm sorry. Coffee and Kareem. Taraji P. Henson is a great friend of the show, a wonderful actress who's done gotten some Black Reel Awards. Local girl, love you, baby, but nah. Ed Helms and Taraji P. Henson, horrible chemistry, terrible story. I mean, oh my God. No. All right.
Yes, Coffee and Kareem. Yes, that's on my list. Yes.
Another female empowerment story gone wrong, Like a Boss, with Selma Hayek and company. What were they thinking? I love Tiffany Haddish, but she's turned in a couple dog movies lately, and this one, stinks to high heaven. I wasted my time watching this movie. After I was warned not to, I went to do it anyway, and yeah. Oh well. Number 2, wonderful actor Robert Downey Jr. did some wonderful things in the Marvel Universe, and his first excursion outside was a film called Doolittle, and he did little for the company by making this movie. He should have stuck. I wish we could bring Tony Stark back. That's all I can say, because if that's where he's going, his career is shot. I'm sorry. Robert, please go back. Tony Stark. That's much better.
So I have an inkling what's on the top of your list, and you are wrong. Because that was
you have no idea what's on the top of my list.
Let's hear, man. What's number 1 on your list this year? Watch this. You see my face? Look.
The number 1 film on my list is a movie called The Last Days of American Crime.
Oh, that's not okay. All right. So you threw me a curveball.
Yeah, this is another one of those things where, it's a futuristic tale about they come up with this signal that they're going to play, and everybody's going to not be able to commit crime anymore. And you would think that's a wonderful thing, except for the criminals who want to continue to commit crime. They got to figure out how they're going to pull off this one last job before the signal goes off, and they're stuck in their tracks. So the movie was stuck in its tracks. It slowly plotted through this idea of we're going to rob this bank of all this money, and it just did not. Oh my God! I just wish that I had more time. I wish I had more time, because that thing stunk to high heaven, and I wish I had never seen it. Thank you. Well, Netflix puts out a lot of movies, and some of them are good, some of them are really bad. That one, really bad. Really bad.
Now it's interesting. I didn't see this film, but when I was doing the research for this show, I had, multiple lists, and that film that you just discussed finished number one like 3 or 4 times. So I'm there's validation that this film must have really been bad.
Really,
And after the
really.
LaQuisha experiment last year, I'm not going to take on bad movies on purpose. Like, I want to see how bad it is. No, I'm good. I'm good. So, all right. So I'm going to have you read through your list again at the end of the show.
Okay.
But I'm going to unveil my list now. And my honorable mentions, I'll start off with, and I'm not even going to really go into them, is I still believe in Antebellum didn't make the top 10 of the list, right? So since you graded yours, I didn't have mine in any particular order, except I had a clear number one. So I'll just start from the bottom and work my way up. The first film that was on my list, or the bottom, which would be, I guess, the number 10 spot. Man, I have loved Robert De Niro, and this guy has been great for almost 40 years, man, on screen, man. From his debut, and Martin Scorsese's debut when he starred as Mean Streets. He played Vito Corleone, the elder Vito Corleone in The Godfather 2. Of course, there's Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, Goodfellas, Casino. De Niro has done so much good work, man. And the scene with Grandpa, my God, man. Were you trying to build a house? Was this like a wing on your house? Did you want to go on vacation? You needed a check? Like, what are you, Uma Thurman, what's my name? Christopher Walken, Cheech Marin, Jane Seymour. What are you guys doing in this story about a boy who's mad that his grandfather's moved into his room? So he tries to undermine him, and they go back and forth at war with one another. Nah, you got better use of your time. And Robert De Niro, there's better use of your time. I'd rather you not work than sully your legacy with trash like this. Don't do it to yourself, Robert De Niro. You better than that. Look in the mirror. You Robert De Niro. Come on, man.
Robert freaking De Niro. I think the story was written by the kid too, or something.
It was written by a kid, and the fact that De Niro actually threw him a bone and appeared and starred in this movie, I guess, is a coup. But if you're gonna get Robert De Niro in your movie, you got to make a better movie, kid. That's kind of how you have to say it. The next film on my list, man, we talk about concept. If I told you I saw a movie that had a story of a wealthy patriarch who dies and leaves his daughter an inheritance, you'd be like, okay, we so far we're moving along. What if I told you, Charles, that the inheritance that the father left her was a guy chained in a basement who had been in the basement for 30 years? The father leaves the inheritance. Simon Pegg plays the guy that's locked up in the basement. There's no instructions on what he's done, why he's in the basement, instructions on how to care for him. It gives you one of the most bizarre. Now, I get it as a concept. It's original, right? Because, hey, I'm going to give you this guy in the basement. But this movie is over the top, zany, and it's just mind-numbing. I go back to LaQuisha. It's mind-numbing sometimes that somebody encourages you to write a movie and then doesn't think about what it's going to look like once we put said movie together. And Inheritance is that movie. Just crazy concept.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, again, I repeat, man chained in the basement is the inheritance. Okay.
That's what every girl wants.
Is a man chained in the basement? Chained in the basement?
A man chained down in the basement? Every girl wants that.
All right. My next film is a film that Charles already talked about. And this is a film I actually went to a screening. This is back in the good old days when we could go to the movies. And I sat in a theater on a cold night and watched Salma Hayek, Tiffany Haddish, and Rose Byrne in a movie called Like a Boss. And Like a Boss is everything unlike the title of this film. There's nothing boss about how bad this is. And you talking about Tiffany Haddish, who I thought actually was decent in The Kitchen. The Kitchen was just a movie that just didn't work. Tiffany Haddish, you know, hey, I know you out there living your best life, and you know we've heard your backstory. You keep on making movies like this, where you started. Never mind. That's kind of harsh, but I'm just saying that movie, Like a Boss, is not good. I will also say if Tiffany Haddish is watching, because I'm not going to be that derogatory, because anybody can be in one of these films. If Robert De Niro is on our list in a bad film, Tiffany Haddish is not. It's no. What's the word I'm looking for? There's no shame in being in a really, really bad movie. Will Smith's been in a bad movie. Denzel Washington's been in a bad movie. But I will say, invoking Denzel's name, is that we have this conversation, you and I have it with other critics, that Denzel Washington is 40 years in the business. And I can count on one hand, how many bad Denzel Washington movies I've seen. That's the answer. In 40 years of work, 4. So if you're going to choose films, and that's for everybody else that's on this list, you got to do a good job of picking projects that speak to you, not projects that speak to your bank account, or projects that you think that may speak to some sort of an acclaim that you're going to get. You got to find movies that are true to you. Denzel Washington does not get nominated for every film he does, but Denzel Washington, I hold him up as a beacon, as someone who intelligently finds films that fit the skill set that he has, which is why he doesn't make a lot of bad movies. So Tiffany Haddish, Rose Byrne, Salma Hayek, all 3 of you guys are better than this. I understand what you're trying to do. Like a Boss is not the answer. The comedy didn't work. The story didn't necessarily work. The pacing of the film didn't work. There was a lot of stuff in Like a Boss that just doesn't work. And then that brings me, because I couldn't wait.
Before you do, let me just say, that was the movie you had. I said, I'm going to go see Like a Boss screening. You had already seen it. And you were like, yeah, you have fun with that, Chief.
About that, bro. You don't want that in your life, man. But you didn't listen.
I didn't listen.
And this next film I want to talk about, I've been waiting for 12 months to do this one. Man, we talk about chemistry on a set. And Taraji P. Henson, I've watched you in Baby Boy. I've watched you in, what was the Benjamin Button film called?
The Curious Life of Benjamin?
Curious Life of Benjamin Button. I've seen Taraji P. Henson. I've seen her in Empire. Taraji P. Henson can act. She's a really good actress. But for some reason, last year, I want to say it was either last year or the year before last, she did Proud Mary. Horrible. And then she turned around a couple of months later, and there was another film she did. I'm trying to remember what it is, because she had 2 really bad stinkers in a 6-month time period, right? So then you get What Women Want, which I thought was actually a good rebound for her. And then we get to Coffee and Kareem. Now, the fact that her and Ed Helms have as much chemistry as me and this mug tells you all you need to know, that the story is about a boy, I guess her son, who's just a really brat of a kid, and disrespectful, mouthy. His mama, it meets this, I guess he's a police officer played by Ed Helms, and he wants to hire hitmen in Detroit to try to get rid of her mama's man. Now, this is the concept of Coffee and Kareem. And then, of course, the 2 of them, because the mob is actually coming for him, and him and the kid are on the lam. The movie is just numbingly bad from a standpoint it has bad chemistry. Taraji P. Henson has no business being in this movie. I don't know what she read when she read the page. Well, now, Charles, I don't know if it's just about the money. What did you see on the page, Taraji, that you were like, you know what, I think I can make this work. This is something I want to be down with. I am just stunned by this. And again, like you said, maybe it's the money. I never forget, I tell this story to you often, Charles, when I produce radio at HUR. David Allen Greer came in as a guest. And I remember being in the green room before we put him on the actual show. And I was teasing him. I said, man, you was in 3 Strikes, bro. What are you doing in 3 Strikes? You David Allen Greer. He said, Tim, they paid me 50 G's for 2 weeks. I said, much respect to you, brother. So if Taraji got a check like that, I get it. If you didn't get a check like that and it was about art and you thought you saw something, man, I don't know what happened. Whatever you saw when that movie came out, it didn't work. Which leads me to another Charles choice, Fatal Affair. In a year where we had Fatal, when Deion Taylor took Hilary Swank and got Michael Ealy out from under the bed from The Perfect Guy and put the two of them together, you had a really decent film. You had a really good kind of psychological drama, Fatal Attraction-esque that works. Then we get to Fatal Affair, which came out early in the year. Nia Long, Omar Epps are back together again for the first time in 20 years. In this story about, and I heard Charles' description, so I'm gonna go a little more in detail, about a woman who met a dude back in the day. And I'm explaining it because, you know, these are African-American characters, so I can relate. Woman met a dude back in the day, hadn't seen him, they catch up. She doesn't know that the dude is cuckoo crazy and he's a psychopath. And basically hints the film that he just torments this woman. There's a fine line for me when you're making a psychological thriller, right? And, you know, you think about stuff like The Shining, where you have a character that's just kind of crazy, but he's crazy in a kind of a cool way, like, woo, that's kind of cool. Then you can be crazy in kind of a way where you go, nah, bro, that's just, your crazy is turned up too high. You got to dial that back. And Omar Epps had to dial it back. It just doesn't necessarily work. Like I think about Quaid, Dennis Quaid in was it Dennis? Yeah, Dennis Quaid in The Intruder. You know, there's a right amount of crazy. He's just like, just enough. Crazy is kind of interesting because you got to kind of modulate your crazy. And when you're crazy either goes too high, we got an issue. And you hear my voice going up, right? Because I'm trying to emphasize too high, too much crazy. So in Fatal Affair, they didn't modulate that film properly, and that film stunk to high heaven. I'm not naming networks because I have to work with people, and you know I'm trying to make sure we keep our relationships cool. So
like I said, you're right. He was so crazy, so cuckoo that he was comical. You weren't scared by him. It was just like, this dude is stupid and she's even stupider for getting involved with him. And it was
have to modulate the crazy.
Yeah.
Which leads me to the next film, and Charles had this one, Love, Wedding, Repeat.
Oh.
Love, Wedding, Repeat was a Groundhog Day-esque concept about a guy who keeps going back in time to try to get the perfect wedding for his sister. Man, let me tell you something. Sam Claflin, Olivia Munn, Eleanor Tomlinson. Man, I've had some uncomfortable couple of hours watching movies over the course of my 3 decades doing this. And let me just tell you, there's some movies sometimes that you watch. And let me, before I say there's some movies you watch, let me just pivot for a quick second. There are 2 reasons to really remember movies, right? And I've told you this, Charles, a lot of times. There are 2 things about movies. I remember movies that are really, really great, and I remember movies that are really, really bad. The movies in the middle kind of fade together over time. They kind of blend in like a huge tapestry of whatever you've been watching. But the movies that are bad, they always are remembered. And Love, Wedding, Repeat, I remember you. This was a movie that I watched and could not believe that at some point, whoever directed this film should have just stopped and went, you know what, man? Maybe I need to go home and just rewrite some stuff, because apparently I'm watching these dailies. Dailies, for people at home, is when actors shoot a movie. During the day, they get a chance to watch the playback and what the movie is. And then, you know, before the director is able to take it into the editing suite and starting to build the film. Building meaning that you're putting the scenes together to try to create the story that you have written on the sheet. Because movies are often not shot chronologically, right? So, you know, you get a script that's page 1 to 120. We're not shooting it all in that order. We're shooting this day, this part today, another part over here today, and then you build the film. So I have to explain that when we get to Love, Wedding, Repeat, because somewhere in what I wrote on the page, what they said on the camera, what we shot, and then what we put together as a movie, this thing didn't work. It's not working. I'm not going to talk about the distributor of this because the distributor, as a rule, doesn't have a studio, right? They buy screenplays and they go, we'll give you this amount of money to make a film. I'm going to need you, network that I won't name, to have tighter restrictions, tighter oversight on some of these stories, because there's some more of these stories that I'm going to talk about that are made from the same distributor. We need to tighten up the oversight. And something like Love, Wedding, Repeat does not need to sully the screens of paying consumers at home. Stop it. Stop it. And wow, talking about that distributor, you didn't have this movie on your list. This movie is a stink bomb that was lobbed into my house, and it's still, I can still smell it, and that's called The Wrong Missy. David Spade, a film produced by Adam Sandler, who we will talk about more in detail a little later. This film tells a story of a guy that has a blind date. Charles, I want you to listen to this. Has a blind date with a woman named Melissa. Melissa is crazy. And when I say crazy, Melissa's crazy is the wrong word. We should never call anybody crazy. My apologies. I don't want to get bad emails. Melissa has challenges in a relationship. And her behavior turns, you know, David Spade's character off, and he distances himself from her. A couple months later, he meets another woman, much to his liking, who also has the same name. He starts texting her, not understanding, and invites her on a trip. And when he gets on the plane, expecting the second Melissa, the first one shows up, hence the title, The Wrong Missy. And then there's all sorts of bad behavior and mad cat just antics that occur. And this movie, to me, felt like in real life, somebody should have just pushed the pause button. And when I talked about Love, Wedding, Repeat, same thing here. You should have went back in and just simply looked at it, Charles, like, bro, it's not working. What are we doing? Spade is not an engaging character. His comedy to me is dated. It's been dated since he was on SNL 25 years ago. This concept is kind of dumb. The characters are annoying. There's nobody to root for or care for. So as an audience watching a film, what are we watching? So The Wrong Missy is the wrong movie in the wrong year, in the wrong time for you to ever, as Andre 3000 once said in Sergeant Jackson, for you to ever watch. Do not watch The Wrong Missy. And anytime Adam Sandler is producing your movie, the next movie on our list is hence Hubie's Halloween.
Hubie Halloween?
Hubie's Halloween. I'm going to leave this here for a second. Look, Hubie's Halloween. Hubie's Halloween is a story, there's a Halloween story about a delicatessen worker. I'm going to read the concept to you, and then you tell me what's appealing about this. A delicatessen worker that loves Halloween who must save the town of Salem from a kidnapper. I'll wait. I'm just saying, I'll wait. I watched this film, and my initial reaction was like, I brought in my producer / significant other who literally wanted to fight me for making her watch this movie. I mean, literally wanted to fist fight me because I sat her down to watch Adam Sandler embarrass himself yet again. How many times? And Adam Sandler, I never forget, let me just pivot for a second. Years ago, and when I say years ago, it must have been 5 or 6. I was at a screening in Washington, D.C. And, oh yeah, I remember the movie. He had a movie called Blended, which I call the vacation movie, which basically is a nice way of saying Adam Sandler has worked out a deal with a particular network where they allow him to make movies under his banner, Happy Gilmore. And he gets his friends, Chris Rock and other ex-SNL members, and they go and shoot these movies on these elaborate locations. The movies aren't horrible. He gets a chance to go on vacation with his friends. They hang out. So I call it a vacation movie. This movie, I don't know what, as MC Light once said, I'm gonna use a lot of hip hop references and TV references. I cram to understand why anybody thinks that Adam Sandler as a comedic actor has, as they say with an athlete, he has nothing in the tank. He has left it out on the field. If he ever had anything to begin with, Adam said, Charles, I'll ask you, what's the last entertaining comedy that you thought Adam Sandler made?
Well, you had me until you said comedy, because I thought Uncut Gems was actually pretty.
No, I purposely said comedy for that reason.
It just cut through it all the chase, because when I saw the trailer for this movie, I said, "Oh, the Waterboy's grown up." I said, I don't need to see it. I don't need to see it.
Let me tell you what was worse, right? And we talk about how bad this movie is. Let's talk about some of the cameos that are in this movie. Maya Rudolph, Tim Meadows play a couple. Tim Meadows, you made Ladies Man, so I don't really expect a lot from you. Maya Rudolph, you better than this. Shaquille O'Neal is in this movie. Charles, did you see this?
Yeah.
He's in this movie. which it's just ridiculous, man. It's so ridiculous on levels. Like what, 10 is the worst. This movie is like a 47 in the ridiculous meter. If it's a scale of 1 to 10, it's just that ridiculous to me. So that made my list. Oh my God! And the next film on the list, I know I'm gonna catch heat for this because I've been catching heat since this director came out and started making movies. And I can't tell you, especially around this time of year, Charles, I would show up at Christmas parties and people going, "Why you keep hating on Tyler Perry?" I like Tyler Perry, but why you hating on Tyler Perry? And I'm like, man, Tyler Perry, I think is an extraordinary businessman. He's a humanitarian. The studios in Atlanta, I think that is amazing. But last time I checked, and last time I checked for you too, Charles, they call you a film critic, which means that you are a person who critiques movies. They didn't call me a humanitarian critic or entrepreneurial critic. They called me a film critic. So the work that you are doing, as we would say in the sports, between the lines, the things that you are doing in whether it's a series, whether it's a movie, whether it's a limited series or a special, anything that you put out for public consumption, I, as a film critic, have the right to critique your work. And when I watch Fall from Grace, man, let me tell you something about Fall from Grace. Man, Felicia Rashad, Cicely Tyson, I want to apologize for all the extraordinary talent that graced, no pun intended, graced this movie, only to watch the final cut be one of the most ridiculous things I'd ever seen. Now, as a pivot, Charles, because I told you this is my favorite show of the year because I get a chance to vent. All our lives, right? I've been a professional who's been getting a check to critique films for 3 decades, but I was watching movies long before that. So every movie, Charles, I would ask you, how many movies have you've watched movies that have courtroom scenes, right? You've watched Jagged Edge, To Kill a Mockingbird. You've watched any number of movies that are legal films, right? Even TV shows.
Yes.
Can I ask a question? Because I'm not a lawyer, and nor did I stay at a Red Roof Inn last night. So I'm just going by what I think I know. Have you ever, Andre 3000, ever watched a movie where a judge, after listening to the deliberations and making a sentence, coming down and sentencing a certain person, have you ever seen the judge sentence a person and then the attorney go, wait a minute, judge, I got more evidence. More evidence. Far From Grace did. Have you ever, Charles, seen a movie where a police officer or detective apprehends a suspect, puts said suspect in handcuffs, bends suspect over police car, gets another 911 call, and then goes, oh, gotta bounce. Well, what about me? Hey man, I get you when I get you. Have you ever?
Twice. He did it twice.
Wait a minute. The other thing is, I understand it was a period piece, right? It was a throwback. Who came up with the wigs that were used in Fall From Grace? So there were so many elements. This movie is not bad because it has a bad concept. It's bad because, as you said earlier, it's about the execution. The execution made it feel, and this is one man's opinion, right? So I wasn't there. I wasn't there when he filmed this. I think he filmed this movie, if I'm correct, Charles, in 8 days. Am I correct?
Something like that.
It was something like that. It was a really short shoot. I'm just here to say that, as we always heard the phrase, all money ain't good money. All fast filming ain't good film. Sometimes there's a reason we need to take some time to think about what we're doing in order to figure out, as we build the film, I keep going back to the build, what we had at the end of the day. And again, said distributor that put this movie out, you got a bunch of films that are on this list. You gotta have tighter cost control, and you cannot let Mr. Perry, who I believe is a wonderful character actor. I've seen him act. He's been pretty good in several things. Gone Girl. I mean, seriously, I'm not here to crucify Tyler Perry. I mean, Tyler Perry is a 9-time Black Reel Award nominee. He's never won, but he's got 9 nominations. He's a hell of a businessman. I just want his films to be better. I just do. And A Fall From Grace was absolutely horrendous as a story, which leads me to the last film on my list, which actually is the #1 worst films. Charles had it at number 10. Tim Gordon has it at number 1. Tom Hardy is Al Capone. Man, let me tell you something. I'm watching this movie, and it dawns on me halfway through, Charles. You see I'm scratching. Whenever you see me scratch my beard, man, you know I'm about to drop it on you. It dawns on me halfway through that Al Capone, extraordinary life, mob boss, Chicago, St. Valentine's Day Massacre. There's all these aspects of Al Capone's life that are absolutely amazing. The filmmaker, Josh Trank, picks the worst. He picks the last year of Al Capone's life that we want to tell that story. Tom Hardy signed on. The last year of Capone's life, you know what? That might be interesting. Well, guess what, Tom Hardy? It was not. And I think the low point for me, and how do I say this without grossing the audience out? I'm trying to think. You see my face. I'm still processing. So let me go slow because I want to make sure I hit the point. The film talks about him. Of course, he has syphilis and dementia, and he's living in Florida, right? So he's the last year of his life, and I think for me the low point of us watching it at home was let's just say the character wakes up in the middle of the night. And there's been a release of fluid that Josh Trank made sure we understood what he did in the bed. And let's just say it was not the #1. I, at that point, went, Nah, bruh. You are number one. Everything about this movie, Hardy's performance, the pacing, the story itself, the choice of even to tell this story. So it would be like, okay, here's a good analogy. And I'm not in any way comparing these two people, but just trying to give you contrast. Barack Obama has had an extraordinary life. What if I did a biopic of, or if I did a slice of a year of Barack Obama's life, and we picked the most mundane period of his life and said, let's do a film about Barack Obama when he was at his most boring. That's what Trank did with Capone. It's the story. It's almost like a bait and switch that you're giving us a guy we think we like, but then you give us an aspect of his life that nobody liked, including Capone himself. Do you think Capone, if he were alive, would have signed up to say, yeah, man, or if you could go to the great beyond like they did in Soul and say, hey, Al Capone, we want to do a movie about you, but we want to do it about the last year of your life. We want people to see you crazy, dying from dementia, dying from syphilis, showing you not able to hold your bowels in bed. We want to show all that in the movie. You cool with that, Al? Bruh, I was just deeply.
I mean, there's a term that some people use that, you know, somebody crapped the bed. Josh Trank crapped the bed with this.
Literally, and you had to show it to us. So that's my list, man, my 10, man. But, you know, like you said earlier, there was so many films that could have made a list this year. But like I said, there was one particular distributor that there's a lot, I would say the lion's share. How many of those films did you have on your list? Because we're not using the distributor's name. But, how many of those films did you have on your list? I have, hold on a second, I'm counting.
4.
You have 4?
1, 2, 3, 4.
1, 2, 3.
My honorable mentions were also from that place too. So I mean,
I have 6. Think about that for a second. The 10 worst films of the year, and 6 of them. You said you had what, 4?
I had 4.
So a third of your list is
5. I forgot The Last Days of American Crime. It was from them as well. Yes.
Woo! Wow. Producer?
All I'm saying is,
Charles Kirkland had 5 films from one distributor, and Tim had 6. Wow.
All I'm saying is, I'm available. If they need somebody to help them along with this thing, hey, call me. Just hit me up. I'm happy to help. Happy.
So before we get out of here, one more time, man, go through your 10 films again, because we've been analyzing these films. Go through the films that are on your list.
Number 10 was your number 1, Capone, Fatal Affair, Underwater, The Rhythm Section, Bloodshot, Ava, Coffee and Kareem, Like a Boss, Doolittle, and finally, The Last Days of American Crime.
All right. And I had The War with Grandpa, Inheritance, Like a Boss, Coffee and Kareem, Fatal Affair, Love, Wedding, Repeat, The Wrong Missy, Hubie's Halloween, Tyler Perry's Fall from Grace, and Capone. Wow. Man, let me tell you something. If you took those movies and, I don't know, you just wanted to harm somebody, if you force people to watch those movies, man, I'm telling you, I almost got into a fist fight over one of these movies. Fist fight.
I mean, it's a lot of torture. It's a lot of torture. I could play this movie and they would give up all the sequels of Guantanamo. I just sit somebody down and watch that. I'm getting all the information. Please just make it stop.
Okay. So yeah, Charles, I hate to end on such a note, man. I mean, we've had a great year of some extraordinary projects, some extraordinary films, man. But you know, this is work that's got to be done. and it's not for the faint of heart. I tell people all the time, you know, when people come to us about some of these bad movies, there are a lot of people who didn't get a chance to watch a lot of these movies, just like there are a lot of people that didn't get to watch some of the best stuff of the year, and people were watching stuff in between. You know, your job as a critic, and I talk about this a lot, is that, you know, there were several years where I averaged close to 270 movies a year that I was watching. I didn't, you know, since this year was a pandemic year, I didn't necessarily keep track of all of the films I was watching, but we watch a lot of movies, man. And, you know, I tell people all the time, the average person before the pandemic, you had people who would see maybe 1 to 3 movies a month. So if you're seeing 3 movies a month over the course of a 12-month year, you're seeing about 30 movies a year. Let's say if you raise that number to 5 a month, which I think is high for an average person who had to pay to go to a theater, you're seeing 60 movies a year. So you're still seeing a sliver of the movies that professional film critics and writers and reviewers are seeing. And inside that, you know, you're making choices with your dollars. You're not seeing Capone and Inheritance and Underwater, a lot of these films.
Hopefully.
but now, unfortunately, it was such a very interesting year because we talk about a particular streaming service that really dominated this list in a very, very bad way, which is why I didn't want to use their name. And it's not that because we just want to work with them, but I'm just not trying to single you out for the bad stuff you do, because the same distributor is probably, for our Black Reel Awards in our history, the second winningest distributor that we have. So they make good stuff as well as bad. I mean, you look at Disney, you look at Universal, you look at a lot of these companies. There are some bad movies that come from all sources, but this year was just pandemic year. Woo, 2020, boy. Coffee and Kareem should have really been number 1. I mean, Coffee and Kareem. I mean, but I can say that with a bunch of films. I mean, you know, All from Grace, you know, for reasons that I explained, including, you know, having poor Cicely Tyson coming down the street and Felicia Rashad. I'm like, man, all I can do, Charles, is drop my head and shake and look. Wow, man.
Yeah, that was. You know what? It was close. It was real close. I wanted to put it on my list, but I was like, man, I'll give it a pass, because there were some parts of it that were kind of interesting, but overall, it was a bad film.
So let me ask you a question, man, because we got about 7 minutes to go. I noticed when we were doing the research for this, and I'm going to give you the question: what big budget film have you seen this year that really merited being on a top 10 list? Because I was shocked by one that a certain studio put out that was an Oscar contender that literally showed up on 3 lists as one of the worst films of the year. Was there any film you saw that was when I say a big budget release, I'm talking about like a huge Universal, Disney, even hell Netflix. I mean, you know, Amazon, Hulu. Was there some film that a lot of festivals played on the circuit, or it was deemed to be a contender? Was there anything you saw that had worse film capabilities on it?
You know, I think I'm looking at the same list that you're looking at, and I know what film you're referring to. And I agree. It wasn't a great film, but it certainly, to me, didn't make like the top 10 worst films of the year. But I do agree that it wasn't that great of a film. A lot of people thought it was going to be magnificent. And I even had a dream the other night about meeting one of the stars of this film and asking her, well, why? What were you thinking?
Was that star in character, or was she just a normal person?
She was just a normal person.
Oh, I was ready to say that, because that's kind of crazy if you have like. We're talking about Hillbilly Elegy, by the way, which was the Netflix release from November that showed up on several lists, and I was like, wow, I didn't think it was worst film of the year bad, but man.
I mean, some people said that George Clooney's latest one can be in that same area, but I'm you know, I don't think it's that bad. I think it's bad, but it's not that bad.
You see my face? Look, man. Yeah. Wow. I'm gonna be nice, man. But damn. I mean, it's just it's.
I mean, honestly, not every movie is great. Not every movie can rise to the level where you can get Oscar awards, and even sometimes Oscar awards don't mean a lot to nominations because some of those movies are still pretty bad. But you know, for the purposes of this list, these movies were extremely bad, and I'm not shading George Clooney, Midnight Sky, or Hillbilly Elegy. They're not great movies.
Come on, Ron Howard. Yeah, we're not shading Ron Howard. I mean, these are guys who are industry stalwarts, and like I told you earlier, man, I think anybody can make a bad movie. I mean, I don't think, but I think the key is that you don't want to make a bunch of bad movies. You know,
right.
you allow maybe one or two. But you know, because Will Smith made After Earth.
I was gonna say Glenn Close is not gonna go down in history as being a bad actress and being in bad movies. She's got her legacy is pretty much stacked because she's done a lot of good stuff. And same thing with Clooney. He's done a lot of good stuff. So
Forrest Whitaker co-starred in Battlefield Earth.
Right. There you go. There you go.
Now John Travolta starred in Battlefield Earth and then made Gotti. So I'm just watch this. I'm keeping my face straight because I'm literally laying it out.
Actors out there that are kind of 50-50 on their records. So you know.
But the more important part, Charles, and I didn't mean to cut you off because I'm gonna let you finish your thought. The more important part is to understand that people who watch this, I want you to understand that we are trying to be fair and balanced, and it's not even though I'm slamming your movie, I'm not slamming you because I understand that there are a lot of talented professionals behind the camera, whether it's cinematographers, costumers, makeup, you know, grips, everybody that works on a film. When a movie doesn't work, you know, that character, the people we see in front of the camera get the brunt of it, but somebody worked on these movies. Yeah. So I'm not here to shade those people. I'm just saying that these 20 movies that we named and some of them overlap, they didn't work, pimping. They were not good. So, and we got to call, no pun intended, David Spade. We got to call a spade, David. So, Charles, over the course of, you know, I got a couple of minutes. Over the course from March, because we haven't been in the studio, we've been doing home editions of our show since June. So over the last 6 months, now with us being at 434, we've done 33 shows, Charles, between June and now, which is just crazy to think about, right? And to think about that we haven't been in the studio and how much of an adjustment it's been since the pandemic began. I just want to applaud you, man, because, you know, you have rode with me as we tried to figure this thing out, man. I mean, there's no other nice way to say it, man. I mean, we didn't put a show in the air for 3 months because I couldn't understand, like it was so new that nobody kind of understood what to do. And initially, but when we came back, we were able to come back with the guests, with the topics. And, you know, I get a lot of credit because my name is on the show. But, brother, you have been there. You've been riding. And no matter what Travis Hobson, another colleague of ours, will say about you, you have earned your stripes. You are capable. You are a great co-host. And I just wanted to commend you publicly for what you have done, what you have meant for the growth of Keeping It Real with FilmGordon. When Charles and I met, because Charles, you've been doing the show, you've been riding with us now, what, for almost 2 years?
Yeah, 2 years. At
least 2 years in February.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So, hey, man, so salute to you, brother. Great job. Happy holidays to you and to our audience. One final tip before we get out of here. For the love of God, stay away from all these movies we talked about today. You do not want to be that curious to go, they tripping. Let me go ahead. Okay. If you watch it, I just wanted to say that we put a disclaimer out there you can save yourself some time, because it might not cost you money, but save your time. As we say in closing, every week on this show, please see something. We used to tell people, please find something in the movies to watch. Since there are no theaters, don't watch any of these movies. Go back and listen to our top 10 television and films and watch some off that list.
Right. And while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe to our show on whichever platform you're on. Just hit that little button down there that says like and subscribe to our show so you can get notified whenever we're going to be on the air.
Hey, brother said it all, man. So until the next time, man, you guys take care. Have a happy new year. And as a friend of mine who was a broadcaster used to famously say, and I'm going to borrow his line, we want to talk to you in 2021, not about you. Until then, you guys have a happy holiday, a wonderful New Year's, and we will definitely see you guys on the other side. Peace, take care, be safe.